new season.
You're listening to Arkansas Preps Weekly on Natural State Sports, your top source for the biggest news in high school sports across Arkansas.
And here we go.
What is up, everybody? Welcome in to episode number 74 of Arkansas Preps Weekly here on the Natural State Sports Network. My name's Kyle Sutherland. We'll be joined by the softball guru, Jared Hawthorn, here shortly, but it is state week for those of you who may have had your head under a rock. Of course, if you're listening or watching this show, I doubt you've had your head under a rock, because why else would you come if you're not a Arkansas Prep softball fan? But crazy to believe that we are just about to wrap up the 2025 season. So we've got the state tournaments going on this week at 6 different locations, and then we will wrap everything up the following week at the University of Central Arkansas in Conway for the Weekend of Champions that will also include soccer. So it's bittersweet, but the good thing about this time is it is a do or die go home situation. So this is the best time of year. Yes, it is kind of sucky in some regards because seasons are going to come to an end. There's already been some obviously that have, but this is the best of the best competing against each other. So this is why we start this in the preseason and start talking about it. And we talk about throughout, and we'll talk about a few here that got some upsets in regionals, upsets at least on paper. Some of them, I know, depending on the seeding, some might not look at it that way, but we always know that anytime regional tournaments come around, that crazy things are going to happen. So to get us started here as we begin our conversation here, we'll bring in the softball guru, Jared Hawthorn. Jared, 2 more weeks left of the 2025 season. And so we'll have at least one state tournament here in our area. I'm going to go try to check out 5A at least for a day or two at Benton. Benton almost feels like my home away from home during softball season. I'm there at least 3 or 4 times a year, sometimes more, checking out the Lady Panthers or any other games that go on there. But starting to wrap things up here. And now it is win or go home. There is no tomorrow if you do lose in the state tournament.
Well, that win or go home portion of the whole thing is it puts the pressure on a lot of these kids, and it definitely will it will affect a lot of kids. And you know, there'll be some winners, there'll be some losers, and there'll be a lot of broken hearts. We got to see some of that this last week. So just I'm enjoying watching a lot of softball. I'm gonna try to get some of the state games in and get there in person and watch some. I'm gonna try to get to a few games of teams that I haven't got to see yet this year at all. There's 2 or 3 that I definitely want to go put eyes on them, and at least one or 2 games there in Benton, and I'm gonna maybe try to catch a couple others. Definitely looking forward to a lot of softball. I hate that we're getting to this point of the season because it's winding down, but I'm excited about some really good postseason play coming up.
Yeah, we're going to, of course, start as we always do in Class 6A. And I want to tell everybody, look, anyone who's followed this show, whether you just started this year or you did in years past, you've always known me to be transparent with our audience. And I'm just going to tell you, I wanted to get some graphics of the brackets, but with me, I'm just going to be completely honest. Like, just time was of the essence here. And as I've talked about, excuse me, once again, I have a frog in my throat. It seems like that happens every week now. But as I talk about I don't say this every week, but I have mentioned, it takes a lot of prep to do this show, whether that be just gathered information and all those different things. And with me having games that I have to, especially during baseball season now with covering the Razorbacks, had 3 games to cover over the weekend. So that just did not give me enough time to get those. Of course, Will Watkins behind the scenes usually do those. So a big shout out to him. But just crazy times right now as we're trying to wrap up the school year / sports year. So did not have time to get those graphics going, but hopefully maybe as you're watching or listening, you'll have a bracket in your hand, whether it be in the palm of your hand on your phone or following along on a tablet or computer. And you can have the brackets up here as we do these previews. Most of this is going to be we'll talk about some of the highlights from the regional tournaments. This is mostly going to be towards state tournament play, since that's what we are in the week of. But starting with that, of course, in the higher classifications, you didn't have district and regional tournaments. They just finished their regular season. The top 4 seeds go, or in 6A's case, the top 8 seeds go. And at the top of this bracket here, you've got the Central. Well, you had co-champions. You had Bryant and Cabot as the Central co-champions. Bryant did get the 1 seed, so they will get the bye. They'll get the winner of Bentonville West and Central. Then Harbor got a bye out of so they're the 2 seed. They got a bye out of the West. They'll get the winner of Conway Rogers Heritage. Bentonville, the number 1 seed out of the West, they will get a bye, and they'll get the winner of North Little Rock and Fayetteville. And then Cabot, that I mentioned just a second ago at the bottom of the bracket, they will get the bye and have the winner of Rogers and Jonesboro. And Jared, that's where I'm going to start there at the bottom of the bracket, because you look at this Cabot team, and I noticed I saw on Twitter earlier, which shout out or best wishes, whatever you want to call it, to Natalie Hill, one of their pitchers from Cabot that is going to be out she announced on Twitter that she is out for the rest of the season. And so that's one thing that I'm going to be looking at in this game is Cabot did bring back a good bit from last year. We talked I think around spring break, we went into pretty fine detail about them and talked about some of the kids that they've had contributing for them for a while. And then you look at Rogers, who we've talked about it multiple times, that's kind of been one thing with Rogers over the past few seasons was they've had pitching, but sometimes the bats just don't get going. Just look at the semifinal matchups, for example, over the past 3 years where, and I know they probably get tired of me saying this, where they lost by a run 3 consecutive years in the semis. I mean, they've been right there. Of course, there's a lot of teams that would trade places with them to end their season like that in the Final Four, even, if it was in heartbreaking fashion. But you look at a Cabot versus a Rogers team, and I think a Dalen Osborne against this lineup that has got some really big bats. I think that's – and now also something I want to throw in here. We understand that there are going to be some upset, just like we saw with the regional, even saw a little bit in district. Some of this we're going to be talking as if this team advances past that team. That's just kind of how this goes with the way that these formats work and kind of how we always do this state championship or state tournament preview show. So that's going to be, if you hear us say like the matchup of these 2 teams, that's just assuming that a certain team advances. Now, in Cabot's case, as I mentioned, they get the bye. So again, they'll get the Rogers-Jonesboro winner. You do expect Rogers to take care of business in that game, but to think about Dalen Osborne against that lineup that has shown to be very powerful many, many times throughout this season, that's just really interesting right off the bat.
Well, I do like the possibility of that matchup. I think Rogers is really going to ebb and flow where their bats are. Honestly, Dalen Osborne is a really good pitcher. She's pretty well known for taking care of her end of business. So I think a huge portion of what happens there will be whether or not Rogers' bats show up and are able to put some runs on the board. Cabot's loaded. They got a lot of talent. There ain't no doubt about that. But I think a big part of that will be whether or not Rogers can put up, enough runs to do something with it. I think it's going to take 5 or 6 runs from Rogers to be able to, get the support that they need to be able to get the game won in that matchup. Cabot's defense is really, really good. That's one thing I've heard from several coaches is that Cabot's defense is just as sound as you will see about anywhere. So I think, whether or not Rogers can hit the ball in the gaps or not will be a huge factor in this game.
And then also, too, that's the same side that Bentonville is on. So you would think that Bentonville would likely end up playing either Cabot or Rogers in the semifinals. You look at the other side there. The round 2 matchup, which you expect probably that at the top, you expect that to probably be Bentonville West and Bryant. Now, Bryant being the 1 seed and looking how they have all year, I would say that they're probably, that's your favorite. I mean, on paper and for anybody that's followed, that's probably your favorite on that side of the bracket, at least until you get to the semifinals. But Bentonville West has been an interesting case this year. Now, Bentonville West is going to host the first round and then the second round. I believe the first round's at Bentonville West, and then Coach Early at Bentonville told me that the rest of it will be at Bentonville. So you have 2 different sites here, the west side in Centerton, and then, of course, Bentonville High. But West has been a little bit of an interesting case this year. it kind of seems like over the past few years, just like any team, I mean, you'll have your moments where you get kind of hot and you experience your moments of struggles and all those different things. But, West is always one that's kind of a little bit of a wild card because it's not that they have the lack of talent. We know that for sure. They've got Steph Crittenden, I talked about a couple of weeks ago, that might be the best catcher in the state. She's certainly up there as one of them. But, they do have a win. They lost to Bryant 4-1 on April 11th. So they also do have a win over Rogers, though. They lost by 2 runs recently to Springdale Harbor. So we know that Bentonville West can certainly compete. But that's an interesting case for me. Anything can happen in the state tournament. And you would think that out of this side of the bracket that it's going to be a Harbor-Bryant matchup in the semifinals. But I would probably say, and it's a lot of times it's always the same teams who usually are the ones that are competing in this out of the West: Rogers, Harbor, Bentonville, and then of course Cabot and Bryant and that Central. But I would definitely put West as probably as my wild card in this one. I'm interested to see if you expect them to get past Central. That could be an interesting matchup there with the Lady Hornets and the Lady Wolverines, especially considering this was close not too long ago with the last time that they played.
I agree with you on the wild card factor there. I mean, West has been they've been right on that verge, like they've been a really solid team and they've been right in ball games with some of the very best, the top 2 to 3 in the state, and gotten a couple really good wins, but they've kind of been that good team that hasn't quite made that step to being one of the really, really good teams, top 3 or 4 in the state. And I think it wouldn't surprise me a bit for them if they come up with a big game here to shock somebody. They could very well be that dark horse or that wild card that you're talking about. They're definitely talented enough and solid enough that, one good hit or make one great defensive play might be the difference in winning a ball game here and might be able to shock somebody and advance, one more round.
And on down, I couldn't tell if my mic was muted or not, to 5A. And no surprise, this is going to be an extremely, you just look at this on paper here, and there's already multiple good matchups in the first round. And I had a chance last Wednesday to go and watch Valonia and Benton. And now it is worth noting Valonia's number 1 pitcher did not play this night, but I don't know I don't know if Jenny Finch could have stopped Benton on Wednesday. I mean, everybody knows who Jenny Finch is, but for today's kids, we'll say Nija Kennedy for more recent times. But this Benton team, Jared, when they're at their best, my word, we've talked about Rexy Crane, how she's taken that next step from her freshman to sophomore year. This defense is crazy good. And we knew that this was going to be another great Benton squad. They brought back just pretty much everybody from last year's very young team. So that was one of the notables from at least this week before we get into the state tournament. They just took it to Valonia in a doubleheader. It ended up taking that 5A Central Championship, the best conference in Class 5A this year. But you just look on down here. You got Greene County Tech Lakeside, Farmington BB, Sheridan Searcy, Valonia Van Buren, Benton Mountain Home. Oh, excuse me, man. These hiccups are killing me. Whitehall, Valley View, Greenwood, Maumelle, and then Marion, Arkansas High. And the one that probably caught my eye more than any was the Farmington BB matchup, because I think probably on paper for first round matchups, with the way that both these two teams have played, BB, of course, being the defending state runner up, Farmington, the defending 4A champion. I know this team looks a lot different from the team that Farmington had in Class 4A last year, but this is a young Farmington team that notched the number 2 seed out of the West, and a BB squad that's been really good again this year. So that's probably my favorite matchup on paper right there. But then also you go down to it, and Jared, you know way more about Arkansas High than I do. Of course, Macy Lee and Nia Arnold, all them we followed for years. But I know, of course, you play against a lot of those girls. Either you've got some of them on your travel team or you've played against them. But I'm not going to say who, but I talked to a coach earlier and it wasn't in Class 5A earlier this week, and they had said that's probably the matchup, or I guess a day or two ago, once these brackets came out, this was probably the matchup to watch here at the bottom of the bracket, Marion and Arkansas High, mainly because you look at the seeding. Arkansas High being the 3 seed behind Sheridan and Whitehall, and they're going to play the East 2 seed Marion. This could be, at least in terms of seeding, an upset watch. Just because you think about what happened to Arkansas High came in on a very high, I think they were the 2 seed last year out of the South, if I'm not mistaken, but they came in with a lot of hype coming into this state tournament. And then Mountain Home hits like 2 or 3 home runs in that game, and they ended up winning and upsetting Arkansas High. So you think about Macy Lee, a 4-year starter in the circle that's thrown a lot of innings for this squad. Talked about Anaya there, who's another phenomenal athlete that plays for him. Arkansas High lost a couple of really key players off of this team, so you weren't really sure how they were going to look this year. But I really feel like if there is going to be at least an upset on paper, and again, I don't want to say upset because I really do think that these are 2 probably equally matched teams for the most part. But I feel like when it comes to seeding, this could probably be the one of all that ends up being, in the lower seeded's favor if it is to happen.
Well, I'm a really, really big fan of Macy Lee and Anaya Arnold and Jules Smart and Taylor Pascarella and a bunch of those girls down there at Arkansas High. Just some really high-class kids, really good softball players. And you're right, they lost some talent. And they started out a little bit rough this year and kind of had to find their way and get in a groove. But they finished pretty strong down the stretch and kind of put themselves back in a place to maybe get a win or 2 in the state tournament. You will never see me bet against Macy Lee. So I've seen that kid throw some really good ball against some really good teams and set some great hitters down. And like you said, Anaya Arnold is a world-class athlete. Just shortstop, center field, doesn't matter. She makes plays both hitting and defensively. Jewel Smart, I'll have to say something about Jewel has just been absolutely knocking the cover off the ball this year. I've had 3 or 4 different people send me, notes and stats and things about her. Like, man, Jewel is killing ball. She's killing ball. Like, she batted something like over 500 in conference in that 5A South down there. And her best games were against some of the most elite pitchers in that whole conference. So they're really talented. I would say you're right on this one. I think that Arkansas High has a really good chance to win it. I'm not going to just say that they're going to go get that win, but if I was having to lay my money on it, I'm going to put my money on Macy Lee and those girls. Marion's a solid team. There's no doubt about it. And I think it's going to be a really close game, hard fought. And it's going to be one of those that maybe whoever scores, towards the end is going to be the one that pulls it out. Without a doubt, though, I think it's going to be a great ball game to watch.
Yeah, no question. And that's the thing too. I have predicted things before, or not. I have made predictions. A lot of times I've been wrong on them, but that talking about Marion though, and then you bring up a good point because they are a good club, and that's kind of the question. Valley View last year, even though they still had Riley Smith, their 4-year starter, I don't think that many saw them going to the semifinal round and losing by a run to especially with how hot Sheridan was. Obviously, we know what they did. They ended up going on to win a state championship in shutout fashion. But that's kind of my big question. Which East team? We know Greene County Tech. They've been pretty much the standard of the 5A East for, well within recent memory for a long time now. I think like the past 7-8 years, probably, well, even before I was covering them. But that's the biggest question for me. What East team is, because we see Cersei's the 4 seed. They've got Sheridan in the first round. They've had some really big wins. They split with Greene County Tech. They had some real big wins at the beginning of the season. So that's kind of, to me, will there be somebody in the East, somebody in the West? Because we know that Whitehall has been really good all year. Sheridan's been good all year. Arkansas High, they've really played a lot better as of late. And I talked to Coach Hoffman. So what is this Sunday as we're recording? I actually talked to Coach Hoffman for about 30 minutes before we recorded earlier. And he was raving about how, because they were down 2-0 to Arkansas High. And he had a lot of great things to say about Macy, a lot of great things to say about that team. So will there be a team from because really past in the West, you've got Greenwood and Farmington, who have really showed what they can do this year. And then Greene County Tech has really kind of been the only consistent one that I feel like, and not to say that Valley View hasn't done some good things, or all those 4 teams that are in the state tournament haven't done some good things, but you probably feel the strongest with saying that Greene County Tech, not just because they're a number 1 seed, but just because of the way that they have played throughout this year. So that's kind of my question here. Will the dark horse come from, because to me, all 4 seeds in the Central Conference, I don't count any of those as dark horses, whether it's the 4 seed, I don't, because those are all some of the best teams in the state that have played in a really, really deep league that we have talked about at length all season. Will the dark horse, to me, come from the East or the West? Because I feel like it's going to be from one of those 2 conferences.
Well, I really, that Greene County Tech Lakeside matchup is a kind of one that intrigues me. I believe that Greene County Tech is the better team. No doubt about it. I believe that Greene County Tech on paper wins that game 10 out of 10 times. But I do know that Lakeside has been kind of a tough, gritty team and got some wins this year that in normal years they wouldn't have gotten. And there's 2 or 3 players on that Lakeside team that I know have really just kind of found their way this year and really started playing better and better. Christina Ingram as a pitcher for Lakeside that has really just gotten stronger and stronger and stronger down the stretch. And her sister Kylie is hitting the ball really well. I think she mostly plays first base for them. And then, they've got several other talented little players on that team. That team is they're one of those teams that might sneak up on somebody. It's not that they're more talented or better or something, but almost like I feel like sometimes they get overlooked and then they sneak up on somebody. And that matchup to me is a little bit, I don't really expect an upset there, but I really feel like Lakeside may give them a really tough, hard-fought game there. For that to be a 1-4 matchup, I think that might be a closer ball game than a lot of people expect it to be. Farmington BB is going to be a slugfest. I mean, there's good pitchers, there's good hitters, but that's going to be one of those, like, I don't know if it's going to be a pitcher's duel or if it's going to be a 10 to 11 ball game, because you've got great hitters and great pitchers there, and who's going to win out. I feel like Sheridan handles business. I feel like Bologna handles business. Benton, without a doubt, I feel like makes a march through this bracket. I don't know. I may be wrong, but I feel like Benton is just almost unstoppable right now, the way that they played and the way that they played this last week. Whitehall's looking good, and then Greenwood, I think, really has a good chance to look strong for a couple of games there.
Yeah, that's an interesting matchup with Maumelle and Green, because Maumelle actually beat Greenwood 7-6 back on April 28th a couple of weeks ago. So that, especially at this level, now I don't know that Greenwood is going to be looking necessarily for revenge more so than actual redemption. I consider those 2 different things personally, but obviously just to continue their season. But just looking at some of the possible matchups in round, keyword possible, Bologna and Sheridan, love that possibly in the second round. Greene County Tech, and then the winner of Farmington BB. So, then Greenwood, Maumelle, possibly against an Arkansas High team if they were to beat Marion. I've seen a little bit of Marion this year, and that's kind of why, I don't want to discredit them too much, just because I haven't seen enough. I've seen out of the East, I've seen mostly Valley View and Greene County Tech. All highlight. I haven't seen them in person. All highlight clips and a few innings here or there that just kind of flipping through on a game night or whatnot. But I really look at that. And hey, I'll tell you too, Benton and Whitehall, 2 teams that are very familiar with each other from the 5A before Benton moved back to the Central. They were battling it out in the 5A South. But I think probably a lot of eyes are really pointing toward that Sheridan-Bologna possible matchup in round 2.
Yeah, I've actually had 2 conversations this week about that possible Sheridan-Bologna matchup. I say this week, today actually, that people are already kind of eyeballing that, and man, that might be a really, really good ball game to watch. Sheridan Bologna, they're both loaded with amazing athletes. One of them games that man, whichever one shows up the best that day, whose bats are there or which pitcher just has all their stuff working the way that they want it to work. There's a lot of talent on both those squads. Might be two of the most talented squads in the entire state right now.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about that. And then down to 4A. So now that we're at the lower classifications, I'll start by mentioning the regional champions. So in the Region 1, P Ridge came out on top of Gentry. Jared, let me just say this. Okay, so last week we talked about how anytime that you're in a pitcher's duel, especially if P Ridge is involved, obviously, in most cases, just naturally, you're going to pick Emery Bolin. You're like, okay, she's going to come out on top of that. And that's what happened here. So Gentry for the district championship beats P Ridge 1-0, and then P Ridge turns around and beats Gentry 1-0. I mean, especially when it comes to the 4A1, you're not shocked by results like this anymore, especially when it comes to these two teams. I mean, over the past couple of years, the losing team has looked pretty good in certain instances. Now, I know that P Ridge really got Gentry's number there in the regular season matchup a few weeks ago in the 7-1 game. But this was redemption here for P Ridge to come back and win 1-0. So Lady Blackhawks take the Region 1 championship. Gosnell, which I'm going to go back to Region 2 because that was some pretty crazy stuff that happened there. Gosnell takes that one. Bauxite wins Region 3. No shocker there. That came down to Bauxite and Malvern for that. And then Monticello takes down Nashville in the Region 4 championship. So let's talk about Region 2 here for a second, because we had a lot go on in this one. So starting with the Southside Southerners. Now, I've never gotten any stuff back on them before, so I don't know a ton about them. But what a performance that they had. To make it to the championship game, you were there as a 4 seed, and you beat Brooklyn. You didn't just beat Brooklyn, you beat them 9-2, and then ended up beating a really good, I know Lone Oak's kind of been a little bit iffy on the back end, but beats a really good Lone Oak team 5-4 to get a 2 seed out of that region. And then Gosnell, who was at one point, you're kind of like, who's the best one out of this conference, out of the 4A3 conference? Is it Gosnell? Is it Brooklyn? Is it Jonesboro Consolidated? Well, Gosnell comes out on top in that one, takes the regional championship also after moving up from Class 3A. Jared, I'll say, like, we've been very high on Brooklyn all year, and I think what this is, I think at this point there might be, if someone doesn't like Brooklyn, they almost maybe feel like I'm making excuses for them, but I truly mean what I say in this, because even though that Brooklyn was inconsistent throughout the year, you expect that with the youth that they have. And I really think that this is going to be probably, I think, and maybe if it's not next year, maybe the next, and I know that we're talking way down the line here, but this is going to be one that they look back on, especially these freshmen and sophomores. This is going to be a season they look back on, and they're going to find a lot that a lot of learning lessons came from it. I mean, they had a freshman pitcher, they had a freshman leadoff hitter. There was Amaya Curry at third base. I mean, they just had so much and very talented youth on this team that I don't want to say that they weren't ready for the big stage yet, but then again, it's also one of those things that it's a completely different game from regular season, not just when you get into the state tournament, when you get into any kind of postseason tournament where your back is up against the wall and it's a win or go home situation. I mean, that's a lot of pressure for a young team. Some teams are able to overcome it. Some teams just can't. And that's okay. It happens every single year. I see it in multiple sports every single year, whether it's a upset in the first round of the state tournament in football, or in this case, an upset in the first round of regional. So, I look at this too, and it's like, well, that just also shows me that the 4A3 was maybe even a little bit deeper than we thought, because Westside has looked good at a lot of times this year. And obviously Brooklyn has, and now Gosnell has as the regional champion. So I think that's probably what we learned the most out of this was Southside, they got hot at the right time, and Conference 3 wasn't, or we didn't think it was bad. It was a little bit deeper than we expected, maybe even just a couple of weeks ago.
Well, you cut out for just a second there, so I'm
my
gonna
bad.
you touched on a lot of points there. Of course, Pea Ridge and Gentry and that going back and forth. Man, you're 100% right. We're always talking about, if you're going to talk about a pitcher's duel and Emery Boland's involved, we're going to bet on her. There's no doubt about it. And 9 out of 10 times she's going to win that. But, Gentry is a really, really good team. And that's one thing that I've heard from Pea Ridge's camp, the people I've talked to up there. There's a lot of respect between those programs. You never hear those two teams like taking shots at each other. It's always mutual respect. It's always, man, they're really good. Man, they're really good. Over there at that side. So, Emery had a really outstanding game in that matchup. And I think, to be honest with you, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I think she struck out like 15 or 16 in that matchup for the regional finals. She's rolling. There's no doubt about it. Talking about going down to the two, Gosnell, man, that's a team that they've been kind of, to me, very consistently good, but not outstanding all year. They've kind of been that, they've beat some good teams and they've lost a couple and they've played well. I don't remember ever seeing them get blown out at any point this year, even against good teams. Everything was close. They held things in there tight and played competitively. And then this week at regionals, they just showed up and showed out and played really outstanding ball. And I feel like with Gosnell, they kind of took that step of, we're here, you better pay us a little respect this week. And I'm very impressed with what Gosnell did this week at regionals. Like you said with Brooklyn, they're a super talented team, but they're very young. I can tell you, I've seen it time after time after time, though, when you're having to play freshmen and sophomores, especially in those big moments, back against your wall, win or go home moments, the pressure does get a little bit, sometimes a little bit too much. I don't know that if that's what happened or we just happen to have they just happen to have a bad game or what, but I've seen it in several tournaments this week in regionals when you're having to play, not that you're having to, you have some really, really talented ones, but when you're playing freshmen and sophomores in key positions, when you get to these big tournaments and the lights are really bright, sometimes it's a little more than they stand up to. And what you'll see is those same teams, say Brooklyn, come back next year and they'll have that experience, and you'll see them take that next step and they'll get to state or win 2 or 3 games in state. You see that we've seen that trend over and over and over with a bunch of these teams that we've covered the last few years. Their first time up there with the youth, a lot of times they'll lose that game and miss a state tournament, but then they come back the next year and they make a stronger run and a longer push. I really think Brooklyn will be back really strong next year and probably make that run in the state tournament.
And once again, got a lot of really good first-round matchups. We'll talk about the top, but we'll start, since we've got a few more teams here in this one, we'll talk about, or since we got, I don't know what I'm even saying here. I am lack of sleep. But since we're down to, what I meant to say is, since we talked a little bit about regionals and now into state, we'll just kind of review a few of them here, and then we'll move down to 3A. But looking at the top half of the bracket, so you got a possible Pea Ridge and Malvern in round 2. Now, I really like I like West Side if they're really on. And again, it all goes back to, how much gas does McKenna Craig have left? We know she's a really good pitcher, but it's been on all her this year. So how much gas does she have left for this state tournament? Then in Monticello, Jared, they got no run is easy by any means, but just how they have been playing, I like their draw. They've got Prairie Grove, then they've got the winner of Southside Heber Springs. The possibility of them meeting, which if I'm not mistaken, I think they played in the quarterfinals of the state tournament last year. So, Elena Lyle versus Emery Boland, and Monticello is playing as well as any team in 4A right now. So love that matchup there. But then you go to the bottom, you got Bauxite, Lone Oak. And if those two teams are at their best, there's no telling what could happen. Gentry, Star City, I love that. It seems like every year Nashville and Gravett somehow meet up. A couple of years ago, Gravett walked them off in the first round of the state tournament. I mean, these two teams in orange are just becoming more and more familiar. They're on complete opposite ends. One's in the southwest, one's in the northwest, but they are becoming very, very familiar with one another. But that's kind of what I take out. Really, the two of my main points that I really take out of this is, I think Monticello certainly does have a favorable draw in terms of matchups, but then that bottom half there with Bauxite Lone Oak, Star City Gentry, Nashville Gravett, I mean, the bottom half of the bracket, that has some banger first round matchups.
I was just looking at this bracket. I was looking down here while you were talking as you were saying some of these, and I was just looking at some of these matchups, man. I don't know that there's really a bad matchup anywhere in there. I mean, they're all quality teams. Maybe the most lopsided, there might be a 1-4 that's a little bit more lopsided or something, but there's not a bad team anywhere in this 4A bracket. You look at some of the other brackets, there's a couple that have some bad teams that were lucky enough to advance. But in this 4A bracket, there's not a bad team anywhere in there. So I really do. I really think the whole thing with the matchup you mentioned with Malvern and Westside, McKenna Craig, can she keep Malvern's hitters off balance? That's going to be the storyline of that. If you can hold Malvern down and not let them score, 6 or 7 runs or hit several home runs, you got a real chance against them. But that's a lot to ask. But I'm going to tell you, Malvern is loaded when it comes to hitters. And we've talked at length about a bunch of their hitters and especially Kendall Watson and TK Stewart and Emily Mingy, all those girls, they can flat out mash a softball. And so there's not many places that you can try to work around one and go attack another, because there's so many hitters in that lineup. You got to go find a way to pick around every single player, and somebody's going to get you at some point. So that one I think will really come down to, she's a really good pitcher, but can she manage to keep those hitters off balance enough to keep them from putting up big runs? The one other really interesting one to me that I think is just, man, it's hard for me to imagine this is a 1-4 matchup, but that Bauxite Lone Oak, that I think if they're both playing their best ball, that is a really even ball game with a lot of talented players on both sides of that. And that one, I don't know that I would want to have to lay money on either one of those teams at any point with them playing each other. I think that's going to be a really hard-fought, gritty ball game, whoever pulls that one out.
Yeah, Bauxite, they had some moments of some pretty hard moments of inconsistency. They lost to Malvern twice, and then they beat them in the regional championship. And Lone Oak started off really hot. I think Lone Oak lost to Bauxite by a run or two earlier this year, so they have already played. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing, to think that that's a 1-4 matchup. I mean, it's just how the slate has gone. But it's only a 1-4 matchup on paper, I guess is what I'm getting at, because those two teams at their best, I mean, that could end up being a slugfest with the hitters that each one of those have. But and then on down to Class 3A here. Always interesting, as we have talked about year in and year out in this class. I love the Harding Academy Falk matchup in the first round. Also really interested to see the Melbourne Lincoln get, because Melbourne in that 3A2 conference, it's kind of been Melbourne and Salem that have just battled neck and neck, and I think Melbourne got one of those matchups. Salem's gotten two. I think they've played 3 times, and so Lincoln, obviously, everything starts and ends with Brinkley Morton. That's just kind of, which, by the way, is now the new strikeout queen of Arkansas. Congratulations to her. It wasn't a losing effort, but still individually, just an incredible accomplishment for Brink there to get that. She's over it's 1,000. It's like 1,100 or something that she's approaching, something around that range, between like 1,050 and 1,100. So congrats to her on that. The winner of that one will likely get made. Look, Smackover has had a great year. They have more than surpassed expectations to me, but it is. I don't care whether it's Smackover or who is playing Mayflower. Right now, it's just really hard to bet against. I mean, they've been our number one team for the last month or so, or maybe even a little bit longer than that now. But the Harding Academy Falk, as I said, that one is really intriguing to me. Salem Boonville, that's probably so Salem being the one out of their region. I just realized that I forgot to go through the regional champs. So region 1 was Lamar, 2 was Salem, 3 was Mayflower, 4 was DeWitt. So Salem, as the number 1 seed out of region 2, they will take on the number 4 seed out of, what was that, region 1? Yeah, region 1, which is the Boonville Lady Bearcats. Jared, I'll say, like, this is kind of going to be one of the first times that strength of schedule comes out of my mouth, on this episode here. This is one where, hands down, Boonville's played the better strength of schedule, but Salem, look, they've got a lot of good players, and those players have played some good ball for the past few years. Not calling an upset here, but I think out of the 4-1 matchups, that's probably the one, if I was betting on it, that I would say maybe has the best chance of happening, just because, again, I think that Boonville has had a little bit tougher slate than Salem has. Some of these girls are still left from the 2000 that were sophomores, maybe the seniors, and maybe a few juniors who are freshmen still remember that run to the state tournament or state championship game where they won it in 2023. So they've had that experience, plus some of them have, playing on the state's highest level. So just looking at everything here, if we're going to have a 4 over a 1, I think that one might have the best possibility of happening.
I agree with you on, if there's a 4 over 1, that would probably be the one out of this 3A bracket that could possibly happen. Not taking anything away from Salem, because they're a really good softball team. But Boonville, like you said, does have a lot of experience, a strong strength of schedule. The Boonville is a really, really good team. The only thing I would say is Boonville this year doesn't have Lexi Franklin. And if they are able to get past Salem, I think not having Lexi might be the thing that would keep them from advancing all the way through. But Boonville is a really good team with a lot of talent, some really good hitters, great defense. I'll tell you, looking at all of these, there's some really good matchups in there. The two that intrigued me the most, that Harding Academy Falk matchup, I think is going to be a really good matchup, a really hard fought game. I wouldn't pick a winner out of that because they're both just so talented and so deadly, and on any given day they can play. But I'll tell you another one that I think is going to be a really interesting matchup down there, besides the Melbourne Lincoln matchup that you mentioned, is Lavaca Walnut Ridge. Lavaca is a really good softball team, and even though they came away with the 2nd seed, but Walnut Ridge has been sneaky, quietly good this year, like consistently good, even though they haven't won, a ton of big matchups against great, big, strong teams. They have just been solid all year. Carly Broadway is a really exceptional middle infielder with a great bat there. And I wish I knew more about the rest of the Walnut Ridge team, but every time I look at scores, like, they're just consistently solid. They play really good, like, strong softball, and I think they're just going to compete, and they may be right there. I feel like Lavaca is the team, or Lavaca.
I was about to say, you're going to get some people mad at you.
Sorry. Lavaca is just, in my opinion, they're the better team, but I do believe that Walnut Ridge is going to get them a really hard ball game right there. Falcon Harding Academy is going to be really good, and like you said, Melbourne Lincoln is going to be a really good matchup too. And you brought up, Brinkley Morton passing. I think I may be wrong. I think she's at 1,128 strikeouts now. The record, I believe, was 1,100 even. and I think she's after regionals has made it to 1128. That's crazy. I mean, it's just an insane number. That if she gets a few more games in here in state tournament, she may put up a number that might be really hard to ever beat. So congratulations to Brinkley. Incredibly talented, amazing athlete, great kid. Can't do anything but give her props because she's one of the best that's ever played the game in this state.
Yeah, no question about it. And then also too, before we head down to 2A, I like DeWitt's draw. I like them against Baptist Prep. Then they get the winner of Lavaca and Walnut Ridge. And look, that's kind of what we can do. And now teams can't look ahead, but we can. And to think about Mayflower and DeWitt, that's been our 1 and 2. I think that's been 1 and 2 all year, if I'm not mistaken. I think Lincoln started off as number 1. DeWitt was maybe number 2. But pretty much since we picked back up on the rankings in mid-March after basketball season, it's been DeWitt or Mayflower in that 1 or 2 spot basically every week. And that's pretty much when I looked at 3A, the very first thing I looked at, when will Mayflower and DeWitt possibly, not when will they, like it's going to happen for sure, but when will they possibly meet up against each other? Because to me, that has a chance to be maybe the best game of the entire tournament. Not to say that that's going to, because I know that there's a whole thing about, like, oh, well, this game was actually, people like to say, well, this game was actually the state championship game. And look, there might be some truth to that in certain cases, but there's also some other really good teams on the other side of the bracket too, like our 3rd ranked team, Harding Academy, and others. So I think that this possibly, though, if it wouldn't be the best matchup of the entire state tournament, it'd be top 2 for sure.
Well, talking about the other side of the bracket, there's 2 teams that I really feel like may make a deep run, and that's not taking anything away from Falk on that other side, because that could be a great matchup. Then I mentioned that with Harding Academy Falk, but if you get what you expect there by the seeding, Harding Academy gets by. That Harding Academy Lamar potential matchup would be a really good ball game, and I really like Lamar, the way they've played, especially through the regional, to have a chance to go all the way and then get the winner of what that potential Mayflower DeWitt matchup. So if you get Lamar over there or Harding Academy or whoever you get on that side, you got 2, in my opinion, 2 really good matchups over there on that side, and then Mayflower and DeWitt. That's going to be, if that happens, if it does fall that way, that's going to be a matchup that's just fireworks. I mean, it's great hitters, great pitching, like just really good defenses. Both of those teams are extremely loaded. And Mayflower has looked amazing all year, and they've played a crazy tough schedule. If you go back and you look at Mayflower's strength of schedule this year, I don't know if there's anybody in the state outside of some 6As that play some of the other great 6As. I don't know if there's anybody at state that could say they have a harder strength of schedule than Mayflower.
There's not. Theirs is the hardest, and it's not close.
So, as far as battle tested, yeah, you've got Mayflower's absolutely battle tested and won a huge part of those battles.
Yeah, no, that's right. No, that's exactly. I would probably say Lincoln is maybe behind them. Harding Academy, Harding Academy almost played Orange Beach, who is the defending national champion, 4-time Alabama. They almost, but that got rained out. But yeah, I mean, Mayflower, when you look at playing Harbor, I think they played Cabot. Yeah, I mean, they played not just 5 and 6A schools, some of the best of the best. So yeah, they're. And then, yeah, you mentioned Lamar as well. Between Lamar and Lavaca, some really good battles there. But look, we've been high on Lamar. I mean, we were high on Lamar. We had them ranked when they had a losing record. I mean, because we know what kind of team that they do have, especially when they're at their best. So, yeah, Lamar's in that mix as well. No question about it. Then on down to 2A. So Hackett, the defending 3A champion, they took Region 1. Of course, after moving down to 2A, they took Region 1 of the 2A regional. Then Tuckerman takes down Rivers. We'll talk about the Lady Bulldogs here a little bit more at length, but they take down Riverside in the 2A2 regional. The Bigelow Panthers, got to talk about them some too. They take Region 3, then Woodlawn, no surprise there, takes Region 4. I mean, Woodlawn has just been as consistent as I have ever seen them, Jared, really from the beginning of the season till now. I know this is a tough pill to swallow from a personal standpoint of yours, but Conference 8, they swept that regional and Region 4 and really showed out. So some really good teams there that did a great job there in, what was that? I guess at Woodlawn. But I want to talk first. So I want to talk about Bigelow beating Quitman for the second time this year. They took them down in the semifinals, and then they also beat the Bulldogs back on April 11th, 3-2. Also beat Desark in that region. Bigelow, we've described them, and I think this is very fair. They've been the most Jekyll and Hyde team this year. Right now, they're Jekyll. They have been. I mean, they've had some great wins, but then they've had some losses where you're like, how in the world? And that's softball. I get it, but then you're like, how in the world did this happen? So the two most impressive teams to me that we really probably haven't talked about as much. We know what Hackett can do. They've been number one all year. They've shown that time in and time out. Woodlawn, they were the first team to 20 wins, the first team to 25 wins. I mean, they've been very consistent all year. But Bigelow and also Tuckerman. Tuckerman has been one of those consistent teams as well, but they kind of came out of nowhere. They won those back-to-back 2A titles back in 21 and 22. Did well in 3A the past 2 years, but definitely took their lump. Still played a really tough schedule both of those years. But I mean, this is a really good Tuckerman team, Jared, and they've proved it here, beating Riverside for the regional championship. I was told by a 2A coach who saw them twice, or about around spring break. He said if they stay healthy, this is going to be a Final Four team in the state tournament. Now, that they're still 2 wins away from being a Final Four, a semifinalist, but really young. That's that we're talking about, a little earlier about how are young teams going to adapt. This has been a Tuckerman team that has adapted, and they've got Cotter in the first round. They get the winner of Magnet Cove Quitman. Now that is the same side as Hackett, so you got to get through Hackett to get to a state championship there. But even on that side too, you've got Desark with Kaylee McDonald. You got a Magnet Cove team that's gotten really hot. I don't think that anybody saw Quitman being a 3 seed, but here we are there. That's a dangerous 3 seed. Then you look on the other side. I think, between Bigelow and Poen, that one will be an interesting matchup because Poen has looked a lot better. And then Bigelow, like I said, they've done what they do. They won their regional. But the problem is with Poen and Bigelow, you get the Riverside Hector winner, which Riverside, even though they lost to Tuckerman for the most part, have been a machine in the second half. And then Woodlawn, McCrory, and Acorn, Izard County round up that top of the bracket. So once again, pretty much just a who's who of teams here. I really think you look through this, and some great matchups here. But yeah, it's one of those to where Hackett is the favorite until somebody else proves otherwise. But Tuckerman and still Riverside, I'm not going to count Riverside out whatsoever, especially with Tuckerman and Riverside being on the opposite side of the bracket of Hackett. Riverside is on the opposite side of Hackett. So that definitely bodes well for them. There's a chance we could get a Lily Faye McWhorter, Claire Womack round 2 from the Blazer Blast back in mid-March in the semifinal round. Might get that, might not. We'll see what happens. But I just kind of unpacked my opinions there from the 2A state tournament, and I think that we're in for plenty of great matchups in this one.
Well, in 2A, we go back to the old saying, on any given day, and there were several of the ball games in the regionals and what the potential games here in state that a team can show up and beat somebody that they're not expected to on any given day. And, sometimes teams go and earn a win, and sometimes teams go and beat themselves. And, that's happened I saw several matchups in the regionals where teams went and beat themselves more so than the other team beat them. But I'll tell you, Bigelow is playing really well right now. Like you said, they've been all over the place this year. They've beat some really good teams. They've lost to some not great teams, but they really seem to be on a hot streak right now. In that matchup with Poen is another team that's on a hot streak. They've won. They lost a couple there in the regionals after they won against us. But they were competitive in both those games. They've played better and better the whole second half. The shortstop Avery Oden and the third baseman Liza Crutchfield played insane defense that first round against us in the regional. They just played amazing defense and stopped several what would have been base hits. Did a really good job, and we made a lot of mistakes and hurt ourselves, and they managed to put the ball in play just enough for us to make mistakes, and they did. They're a gritty team and played hard, and they're continuing a hot streak and getting rolling. Their pitcher Jaden Wart threw the ball, pretty well and was solid the whole game and gave her team a chance, and they kept fighting and scratching, and they managed to put us out. We had to show up a little better than we did, and we didn't. But then they're on a good streak, and that's a interesting matchup right there because Bigelow's hot, Poen's hot, so that one will definitely be an interesting matchup. Either one of those teams could win, but as well as Bigelow is playing right now, it's hard to bet against them too. Riverside Hector, you got to like Riverside there, but Hector is one of them teams that, outside of a couple of lopsided losses to Hackett, they pretty well competed with every team they've played this year. So they have a really good pitcher and player in Serena Myers. That she's one of them kids that can show up and hurt you, on any given day when you go to match up. Woodlawn, man, I got to see a little bit of Woodlawn up close and watch them at the regional. Woodlawn looks really good right now. They're hitting the ball pretty well, and Lily Faye, of course, is pitching the ball really well. And she wasn't even at the top of her game. She was fighting like a sinus infection, head cold, and everything else, and she's striking out 15 or 16 a game. So you let her get really fully healthy and get rid of the sinus infection and take off, it may be hard to beat her. And then if you drop on down, Tuckerman has been really strong. Magnet's hot. Quitman's saying that they are a 3 seed is tough because they're a 1 seed that managed to end up getting a 3 seed. There's no doubt about it. I mean, Quitman normally would be a 1 seed without doubt. They lost at the wrong time and kind of put themselves in a little bit of a hole there, but they're a really good team. Magnet's a really good hitting team. Hackett, of course, we've talked about how good they are all year. And then Desart Junction City, I would never bet against Kaylee McDonald when she's in the circle. So Junction City's a really solid little team. But if Kaylee is healthy and rolling and doing her thing and able to play the way that she's capable of playing, that's another team that could make a run well up into the semifinals or even a state championship with her in the circle.
And then last but not least in Class 1A, starting at the top of the bracket, you've got Sacred Heart, Mark Tree, County Line, Mineral Springs, Concord, St. Joe, Bradley Magazine, Scranton, Mount Ida, Bradford, Calico Rock, Taylor, Jasper, and then last but not least on the bottom here, West Side, Greers Ferry, and Nemo Vista. So, Jared, at the beginning of the year on the preview episode, we were asking who's going to be if Taylor gets dethroned, will it be West Side or will it be Scranton or will it be somebody else? Well, throughout this year, I mean, really, the only one that we have seen that's probably going to pose a consistent threat would be Scranton. Now, you're going to get possibly Taylor and West Side in the second round. West Side lost their regional to Concord, which, Concord, look, I'll say that's the team that, if any, and that's probably mostly my fault because I definitely painted the narrative that, hey, they got these Concord girls, they're going to be absolutely loaded, and West Side is. I mean, they got a lot of talent. They had a pitching injury that sorry, if there's sirens that are blaring through, it's because one's passing by my house right now. But they're still a very talented team as West Side, but they lost a key pitcher, really kind of around the beginning of the season. So that has really hurt them. Not necessarily hurt them, but I would say more so maybe set them back a little bit. But then Concord, they still had some of those really good players left. Yeah, they did have a few go to West Side, but they still have a lot of really good players left, and they have proven that. They're the regional champs. Now, Greers Ferry got them, or West Side, I think, got them in the district championship. I think that's right. But then Concord won like 12-4, 12-5. I'm just kind of throwing darts here, so I might be a little bit wrong on this. But you're going to possibly get that Taylor West Side matchup in the second round, which you got to imagine by now that, these West Side girls, some of them are playing together for the last time, and they've won a golf state championship. They've won a basketball state championship, and now they're going to try to do it in softball. So if they do end up beating Nemo and Taylor gets past Jasper, I still think that they're going to give Taylor a good matchup regardless of who wins or loses. But, that's going to happen a lot sooner than we maybe expected at the beginning of the season. Then you got an intrigue, Calico Rock, they're a 3 seed taking on Bradford. If they're at their best, they're pretty good. Howells, because you're going to have Scranton likely play either West Side or Taylor in the semifinals, which gives me a lot of hope on the other side. I still like Bradley a lot, but Jared, just looking at the top half of the bracket, Concord, they've got again, I don't like to use the word easy, whether it's postseason or because nothing is easy in sports, but they've got a favorable path with West Side and Taylor and Scranton all being on the same side. You really do. They're likely going to get Bradley in the second round. Then you get through that. I mean, I'm sorry. I just don't see anybody, and this is no disrespect. I'm just being how I see it as someone who puts a lot of time into this. I don't see really anybody taking down Concord if Bradley can't do it.
I 100% agree on the bottom half being way more loaded than the top half. There's just a lot of good teams on that bottom half of the bracket, and it's going to be a tough road for whoever comes through the bottom half, whether it's Scranton or Taylor or West Side, or someone else comes through that we're not expecting. They're going to have a really tough road on the bottom side of the bracket to get there. You're going to every week, or not every week, but every matchup, every round is going to be, tough matchup after tough matchup to get there. On the top half, just quickly going through those matchups, Sacred Heart and Mark Tree, I feel like Sacred Heart has what they need to get that one done. County Line and Mineral Springs might be a really, really good ball game. County Line's a pretty decent little team, but Mineral Springs has a really good pitcher in Zoe Lockaby. She's a really talented little pitcher, so Mineral Springs may be able to sneak one there and to get on over another game. Concord, I like for sure. St. Joseph's has got some pretty good athletes, but Concord is, in my opinion, quite a bit better team there. And Bradley Magazine is another one that I'm not real sure. I like Bradley. I think Bradley's a good team, but that's one of those that they may have to really show up and play. They can't just take it for granted. Scranton, Mount Ida, I like Scranton in that one. Mount Ida's just, not to take anything away from them, but they're probably going to be a little overmatched in that one with Scranton. Scranton's got a lot of talent. I like Calico Rock there. That's going to be a tough matchup, but I like Calico Rock. Taylor Jasper, I fully expect Taylor to roll there. And then, West Side Nemo Vista, it's going to be a good little ball game. I expect West Side. That Taylor, I think the potential Taylor-West Side matchup will be very interesting. And then the potential Scranton, whoever wins Taylor-West Side matchup, will be another very interesting one. So those are some of those that people will start talking about a possible playing your state championship game in the semifinals versus the championship. But Concord's been a really good team this year. I think Concord rolls through their side. They did definitely get a more favorable draw on the top side of the bracket. I don't know that I would lay any money on any of those top 3 or 4 for sure winning it, but I did see some stats earlier today on Ayla Buford and what she has done individually this year, and her statistics are just almost insane. Uh,
Yeah.
she has had a really outstanding senior year, and she's below 1 ERA for the season. Just been really strong in the circle and hit the ball really well too. So individually, when you start talking about matching up, when you put her in that circle and you're talking about a win or go home scenario, I just have a hard time betting against that kid. I mean, she has proven time after time after time that when the lights get the brightest is when she plays her
I mean,
best.
she's the best player in 1A. I mean,
Yeah,
she's the best player. I mean,
just that kid that
yeah.
she knows how to turn it on and really get after it when her back's against the wall and it's win or go home. She doesn't like to go home. She likes to win. So, there's going to be some really good games there in 1A. I think there's potential of a really outstanding matchup at every round, especially on that bottom half of the bracket.
Yeah.
So, it'll be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, and they still got to win 4 games before Taylor wins. It's unprecedented. If it happens, unprecedented 8th state championship in a row. I mean, they've already got the record for 7 in a row. I think it was Foreman that went 6 in a row before Taylor had matched them and then surpassed. I would imagine that they probably had somebody. I didn't cover back then. I mean, this was from 06 to 12 or something like that. But I would imagine that they had, a pitcher or some player that won multiple MVPs of the state tournament. But if Ayla wins 4, I mean, you already put her as one of the state's most decorated players, regardless of classification. But man, you're gonna have to start having some real serious conversations if she gets another state ring and another state tournament MVP. I mean, the Bufords, I'm sure that they had to between all they had 3 kids and 2 younger than her. I mean, they're gonna have to add on another room to their house for all the accolades, and a big room at that, because she's not the only athlete in her family. But yeah, I mean, this run that Taylor's on, and we hadn't talked. I mean, obviously we kind of say the cliche, like, okay, yeah, it's Taylor's until somebody else proves otherwise. But I mean, this Taylor run, it is phenomenal, what they have just continued to do. And so, but yeah, so when we meet back up next week, we'll recap, of course, the top moments from the state tournaments, all 6 of them, and then we'll preview the state championship games. I will actually get an opportunity. I got a chance to call the 4A state championship on PBS last year. I'm actually going to be calling through. Of course, we don't know when. We know the time slots. We just don't know when they're going to be until after the teams are decided. But I'm going to have the opportunity to call 3 of those state championships this year. So I'm really excited about that opportunity as I kind of close this chapter out, at least of my sports coverage career. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And, if we still have, we're a little over an hour now. If we still have people watching, I want to remind everybody, this is the time of year when, again, it's win or go home, and anticipations are high. There's a lot of energy, whether negative or positive. Parents, guardians, don't be that idiot who makes your kids look bad this week because you're selfish. I'm just going to tell you that. Do not be that idiot this week, because I've already seen a lot of it this week. You want to take shots at me. You want to take shots at Jared. That's fine. Whatever. We're grown men. We can live with it. And that's something I live. People say mean things about me every day. That's just part of it. But don't be that reason why your kid gets embarrassed. Don't be that reason why their school or their coach or their teammates get embarrassed, because that's unfortunately, I hate that I have to say that, but that's just unfortunately what we see a lot this time of year.
Well, I just want to say that I've enjoyed it this year. I've had a great time doing the podcast, covering all these kids, trying to promote as many kids as I possibly can. Of course, getting the chance to coach and have my daughter play, and be a part of that. And man, did she ever have just an unreal senior season. Ended up striking out 272 and going over 850 career strikeouts. she had a really, really outstanding senior season, and Cutter did as a team. Went 20-3. It's been a lot of fun, and I enjoyed it. We're gonna be covering a lot of these teams for state champion, for state tournament and then state championship for the finals. I've seen a lot of ugliness from fans and from people on social media lately, and it's crazy, that you can come on here and you just talk about kids and promote kids and kids all over the state, and then people want to act that way. But I completely agree with your point. Go be positive. Go cheer on kids. Go be there for kids. Don't worry about if you see something you don't like or you hear something you don't like. Just keep rolling. And kind of like on Facebook, keep
it scrolling.
Yeah,
keep it scrolling.
Instead of being negative, just go be positive about whatever you have to be positive about. That's kind of my thing. There's some really outstanding young ladies playing this game all over the state in every different classification. And we try to cover as many as we can, and we miss some, and we don't talk about some enough, and things like that. But it's never because we're trying to slight somebody or anything else. It's just because we're busy and we cover about 3,000 players in all these teams, But above all else, just go be positive. Go celebrate these young ladies that deserve it. One other thing that I almost forgot, we missed it at the top of the show, and I forgot to tell you, I'm representing the SAU Tech.
Oh, yeah.
SAU Tech, Rockets down there at Camden. I've been very impressed with what new coach Rayleigh Sullivan has been able to put together there, and they just got beat out of the regionals a couple of days ago. But man, I'm gonna tell you, I've heard a lot of good things from some of her players and from kids that she's recruiting. And for someone that's brand new to the program, recently took it over, she's doing a really good job from what I hear. So, shout out to the SAU Tech Rockets down there and their softball program. And as we continue to cover some of our college teams from around the state. And I'm hoping I've got some gear, hopefully got some gear coming for a couple of big ones for our final couple of episodes. So hopefully we can get some of those others in here, but definitely, they're a good and growing program down there, and wanted to give them a shout out while we could.
Yeah, I can't believe I forgot that at the top of the show. I mean, it's been a crazy weekend, man. I'll tell you, Jared, this. I'm sure some of our especially during football season, I cover games our call games on Friday nights, and I'll come home and it takes me a little bit to wind down. But that Razorback game Friday night that didn't start till 10 basically, and I mean I was up work because I had to do we didn't have a post game presser afterwards because it was just too late. But you still have to do some stuff afterwards, and that about killed me. I took 2 naps on Saturday, and I'm still tired. Like that just about killed me, being up till 3 a.m. So I'm kind of riding the struggle bus. So I completely forgot to mention that at the top of the show. But Jared has stayed consistent with it all year long. Every single episode has had in-state college gear on repping. So, well, this is going to wrap it up. We will see you guys next week. Good luck to everybody. Soak in every second, guys. I don't care if it's pregame stretches. I don't care if you're dancing before the games, in the dugout. Soak in every second. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you get to the state championship and you're hoisting the gold trophy at the end, or you're just one of the 16 teams that's in. This is a special time. You have earned this. You get a chance to play in the postseason and in these winner go home situations. I mean, that's pressure is a privilege, as we say. And so embrace every single second of it, especially you seniors. And I think that, that probably goes without saying. You have earned this. So embrace every second, enjoy every second. So, well, that'll do it for episode 74, I think is what it is. But 74. So we'll be back next week to recap the state tournament and preview the state championship game. So for Jared Hawthorn and all of us here, my name is Kyle Sutherland. We will catch you next week.